The crystalline spires of the galactic embassy stretched toward the twin moons of Xerion Prime, their surfaces reflecting the aurora-painted sky in brilliant cascades of light. Tonight marked the annual Convergence celebration, where representatives from across the galaxy gathered to renew treaties and forge new alliances. The grand ballroom hummed with the voices of 100 different species, each conversation a symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and traditional speech. Marcus Chen adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform for the third time, the dark blue fabric with its silver earth insignia feeling foreign against his skin. As humanity's newest ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had spent months preparing for this moment, studying alien customs and protocols until his head spun with the complexity of interspecies etiquette. Yet nothing had truly prepared him for the reality of standing among beings who had mastered faster-than-light travel while his own species was still learning to walk among the stars. The receiving line moved with glacial precision, each introduction a carefully choreographed dance of respect and diplomacy. Ambassador Threx of the Mantari Collective acknowledged him with a series of rapid antenna movements that Marcus recognized as a formal greeting. The towering Gorvani delegate offered a deep harmonic note that resonated in his chest, while the ethereal Luminari representative communicated through gentle shifts in the bioluminescent patterns along their translucent skin. "Ambassador Chen," came a voice like distant thunder, drawing his attention to an imposing figure approaching through the crowd. "I am Chancellor Vorthon of the Drakmari Empire." Marcus turned to face a being that seemed carved from living obsidian, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales that shifted from deep purple to midnight black, depending on the light. Golden eyes, ancient and intelligent, studied him with an intensity that made his diplomatic training feel inadequate. Behind the Chancellor stood others of his kind, their presence commanding attention from every corner of the ballroom. "Chancellor Vorthon," Marcus replied, offering the precise bow he had practiced countless times. "It's an honor to meet you. Earth sends its regards and hopes for continued cooperation between our peoples." The dragon-like being's expression was unreadable, though Marcus caught a flicker of something, amusement perhaps, in those golden depths. "Your species intrigues us, Ambassador. You arrive at our borders with primitive ships and simple technology. Yet your diplomatic corps speaks of equality among the stars. Tell me, what makes humanity believe it deserves a place in this ancient alliance?" The question carried weight beyond its words, and Marcus felt the attention of nearby delegates turning toward their conversation. This was more than casual diplomatic small talk. It was a test, and his answer would ripple through political circles across the galaxy. "With respect, Chancellor," Marcus said, meeting those golden eyes without flinching, "I believe the question isn't what humanity deserves, but what we can offer. We may be newcomers to the galactic community, but we bring fresh perspectives, innovative solutions, and most importantly, the willingness to learn from those who have walked among the stars far longer than we have." Chancellor Vorthon studied him for a long moment. Then something resembling approval crossed his features. "Interesting. Your predecessor spoke only of Earth's achievements and potential contributions. You speak of learning. Perhaps there is wisdom in youth after all." Before Marcus could respond, a new presence entered the ballroom and the very air seemed to shift. Conversations didn't stop entirely, but they lowered to respectful murmurs as Dragon Empress Zalara made her entrance. Even having seen her in holographic briefings, Marcus found himself unprepared for the reality of her presence. She moved with liquid grace, her scales a brilliant crimson that seemed to hold inner fire. Unlike the Chancellor's imposing bulk, she carried herself with elegant authority, her crown a masterwork of crystalline spires that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow cascades. Behind her walked her consort, Prince Thane, and a figure that made Marcus pause. The young woman, clearly the Empress's daughter, based on her crimson scales and regal bearing, moved differently than the others. Where her parents flowed through the crowd with practiced ease, she walked with precise, measured steps, her golden eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the assembled diplomats. She wore a gown of midnight blue that complemented her scales beautifully, but her posture suggested discomfort with the attention her presence inevitably drew. "Princess Lyra," Chancellor Vorthen murmured, following Marcus's gaze, "the Empress's daughter and heir." Brilliant mind for military strategy and xenobiology, from what I understand, though she rarely participates in these social gatherings. Marcus watched as the royal family moved through the crowd, noting how delegates approached the Empress and Prince with eager smiles and animated conversation, while Princess Lyra received polite nods that she acknowledged with brief, formal responses. There was something almost protective in how her parents positioned themselves, creating a subtle buffer between her and the more enthusiastic socializers. "She seems uncomfortable," Marcus observed, then immediately regretted the comment. Diplomatic protocol probably didn't include commentary on royal family dynamics, but Chancellor Vorthen surprised him with what might have been a chuckle. "Your species' gift for observation serves you well, Ambassador. The princess has what your human psychologists might term autism, though we Drakmari simply consider it a different way of processing the world. In military simulation and scientific research, her mind operates with a precision that astounds even our greatest scholars. In social situations like this," he gestured toward the ballroom where Princess Lyra stood near a towering sculpture, studying its crystalline structure with focused intensity, while the party swirled around her. Marcus found his attention drawn back to the princess repeatedly throughout the evening. While other delegates vied for the Empress's attention, discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes, Princess Lyra remained on the periphery. She moved from one display to another, examining artifacts and artistic pieces with the same methodical attention she might give to a scientific specimen. When spoken to, she responded with careful courtesy, but her relief when conversations ended was obvious even to someone who had never met a Drakmari before. The formal dinner proceeded with typical diplomatic complexity, courses served according to each species' dietary requirements. While conversations flowed between languages, Marcus needed his translation device to follow. He found himself seated between a crystalline Zelenari delegate and a floating gas being from the Nebular Collective, both of whom seemed genuinely curious about human culture and perspectives. "Your species shows remarkable adaptability," the Zelenari noted, their voice chiming like distant bells. "Most newcomers to the galactic community struggle for decades to master even basic diplomatic protocols. Yet here you are, conducting yourself with the confidence of a seasoned ambassador." "Perhaps because we're used to being outsiders," Marcus replied thoughtfully. "On Earth, we have hundreds of different cultures and languages. Learning to communicate across those differences prepared us for, well, this." He gestured at the diverse assembly around them. The gas being's response came as a series of color changes in their containment field, which Marcus's translator interpreted as laughter. A refreshing perspective. Too many species become insular once they achieve space travel, seeing themselves as superior to those they encounter. "Your humans seem to maintain your curiosity." As the evening progressed toward the traditional dancing portion of the celebration, Marcus noticed the subtle exodus beginning. Princess Lyra had moved to a balcony overlooking the city, standing alone as the music began to play inside. Her parents were deep in discussion with several military commanders, their attention focused on matters that clearly took precedence over social dancing. The music itself was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, a complex harmony that somehow accommodated the musical preferences of dozens of different species. Delegates began pairing off according to their species' traditional dances, creating a spectacle of movement and rhythm that was both beautiful and chaotic. Marcus approached the balcony, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. Princess Lyra stood with her hands resting on the crystalline railing, her gaze fixed on the city lights below. She didn't acknowledge his presence immediately, and he waited, remembering something from his cultural briefings about not startling individuals who might be sensitive to unexpected stimulation. "The city is beautiful from here," he said quietly, positioning himself several feet away so she wouldn't feel crowded. "The geometric patterns in the light distribution suggest a highly efficient urban planning algorithm," Princess Lyra replied without turning. "Most species arrange their cities based on historical development or geographical convenience. The Zarions clearly prioritized mathematical optimization in their architectural planning." Marcus smiled at the unexpected response. "I was thinking more about how the lights reflect off the water features, but you're right about the efficiency. It's like looking at a living equation." For the first time, Princess Lyra turned toward him, her golden eyes studying his face with sharp intelligence. "You see mathematical beauty in city planning?" "I see beauty in systems that work well," Marcus said honestly. "Whether that's an efficient city layout, a perfectly balanced ecosystem, or a diplomatic protocol that actually achieves its intended goals. There's something satisfying about watching complex parts work together seamlessly." Princess Lyra's expression shifted slightly, and Marcus realized he had somehow said exactly the right thing. "Most beings find my observations about systematic optimization boring," she said, her voice carrying a note of surprise. "Most beings probably don't understand how remarkable it is to see patterns that others miss," Marcus replied. "My sister is a mathematician, and she's always pointing out things in the world that follow elegant mathematical principles. It took me years to realize she wasn't being pedantic. She was showing me a whole layer of beauty that I'd been missing." The music from inside swelled, and through the transparent walls, they could see delegates moving in intricate patterns across the ballroom floor. Princess Lyra watched for a moment, then looked away. "I should return inside. Mother expects my presence at these functions even though I contribute little to the social aspects." "May I ask you something?" Marcus said before she could move toward the door. Princess Lyra nodded once, precise and formal. "Do you enjoy dancing, or do you avoid it because of the social expectations that come with it?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the celebration inside. "I find the mathematical aspects of dance fascinating. The way movement can create patterns in space and time, how rhythm and melody can be expressed through physical motion. But these social dances are unpredictable. The steps change based on the partner's interpretation. The music varies, and there are unwritten social rules about eye contact and conversation that I struggle to navigate." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "What if there was a way to dance that focused on the mathematical beauty you mentioned without the unpredictable social elements?" Princess Lyra turned to face him fully, curiosity replacing the guarded politeness in her expression. "What do you mean?" "On Earth, we have forms of dance that are more like moving meditation. Focus on the music, on the pattern of movement, on the mathematical relationship between rhythm and motion. No conversation required, no complicated social interpretation, just the pure experience of translating music into movement." For the first time since he'd observed her, Princess Lyra looked genuinely interested rather than simply polite. "You dance in this manner?" "I grew up with a grandmother who taught traditional earth dances," Marcus said. "She used to say that the best dancing happened when you stopped thinking about what others might think and started listening to what the music was asking your body to do." Princess Lyra was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Inside, the music shifted to something slower and more melodic, a piece that seemed designed to accommodate the more graceful movement preferences of several species. "Would you like to try?" Marcus asked gently. "Out here, where it's quiet, with music that doesn't require social interaction or conversation, just movement and mathematics." The offer hung in the air between them. and Marcus realized he was holding his breath. He wasn't sure why this mattered so much to him, why he felt drawn to offer this small gesture to someone he'd just met. Perhaps it was recognition of a kindred spirit, someone else who felt out of place in the complex social machinery of galactic politics. Princess Lyra looked at his extended hand, then back at his face, searching for something in his expression. You would not find it strange. Dancing with someone who processes social interaction differently? I would find it an honor, Marcus said simply, to share something beautiful with someone who appreciates the mathematics of movement. For a moment, the only sound was the distant music and the gentle hum of the city below. Then Princess Lyra stepped forward and placed her hand in his, her scales warm against his skin. "I would like to try," she said quietly, "but I should warn you that I may not respond in ways that others expect." "Then we'll create our own expectations," Marcus replied, leading her into a gentle sway that matched the rhythm of the music drifting from inside. "No rules except the ones the music makes for us." As they began to move together on the quiet balcony, with the stars of a dozen different systems watching from above and the mathematical beauty of an alien city spread below them, Marcus realized that sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happened not in formal negotiations, but in simple moments of human connection that transcended species boundaries. Inside the ballroom, the celebration continued with its complex web of political maneuvering and social positioning. But outside, under the alien stars, a human ambassador and a Drakmari princess discovered that mathematics and music could speak a language that needed no translation. The morning sun of Zerion Prime cast long shadows across the embassy district as news of the previous evening's events spread through diplomatic channels with the speed of quantum communication. Marcus Chen sat in his temporary office, reviewing overnight reports from Earth while trying to process the magnitude of what had occurred on a simple balcony overlooking an alien city. His secure communication terminal chimed with an incoming priority message from Ambassador Director Reynolds on Earth. Marcus activated the holographic display, and his superior's weathered face materialized above his desk, expression unreadable. "Chen," Reynolds began without preamble, "I've received 3 separate reports about your interaction with Princess Lyra last night. Care to explain how a simple diplomatic reception turned into what several witnesses are calling the most significant breakthrough in Drakmari relations in 2 decades? Marcus leaned back in his chair, still trying to understand it himself. "Sir, I simply offered to dance with someone who appeared to be uncomfortable at the social gathering. I had no idea that such a gesture would carry any particular significance." Reynolds studied him through the holographic display for a long moment. "Chen, in the 8 years since first contact with the Drakmari Empire, no non-Drakmari has ever successfully engaged Princess Lyra in extended social interaction. She's acknowledged as one of the most brilliant military strategists in the galaxy, but her unique neurological processing has made her essentially isolated from diplomatic contact. Last night, according to multiple sources, she spent nearly 2 hours in animated conversation with you. We discussed mathematics, urban planning, and the relationship between music and movement," Marcus said, still puzzled by the attention his actions had garnered. "She's remarkably insightful. Her perspective on systematic optimization could revolutionize how we approach resource distribution in space colonies." A slight smile crossed Reynolds's face. "That kind of thinking is exactly why I recommended you for this position. Most diplomats would have seen an awkward royal to be politely avoided. You saw an interesting person worth talking to." The communication was interrupted by a soft chime indicating someone requesting entry to Marcus's office. "Enter," he called, expecting his assistant with the day's briefing materials. Instead, Princess Lyra stepped through the door, her formal bearing somehow different from the previous evening. She moved with the same precise steps, but there was something less guarded in her posture. She wore a practical outfit of deep green fabric that complemented her crimson scales, and her golden eyes held a determination that hadn't been present during their balcony conversation. "Ambassador Chen," she said with a formal nod toward him, then noticed the active holographic display. "I apologize for interrupting your communication. I was not informed that you were engaged in official business." "Princess Lyra," Reynolds said from the hologram, his diplomatic training kicking in automatically. "What an unexpected pleasure. Ambassador Director Reynolds, Earth Diplomatic Corps." Princess Lyra acknowledged the introduction with precise courtesy. "Director Reynolds, I came to speak with Ambassador Chen about a matter of mutual interest, but I can return when he is not occupied with official duties." "Actually," Marcus said, sensing an opportunity, "this might be perfect timing. Director Reynolds, Princess Lyra, and I were discussing some fascinating approaches to optimization theory last night. Perhaps she could share some insights that might benefit our colonial development projects." Reynolds's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. "I would be honored to hear the princess's thoughts." Princess Lyra looked between them for a moment, then moved to stand where both men could see her clearly. "Ambassador Chen mentioned that your species is establishing new colonies in previously uncharted systems. The mathematical challenges involved in creating sustainable settlements with limited initial resources follow predictable patterns that can be optimized using algorithms derived from natural ecosystem development." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus watched as Princess Lyra outlined a systematic approach to colonial planning that incorporated resource cycles, population dynamics, and environmental adaptation strategies with a precision that left Reynolds taking notes. Her explanations were clear, methodical, and occasionally brilliant in their elegant simplicity. "Princess," Reynolds said when she finished, "these concepts could revolutionize how we approach expansion. Would you consider working with our colonial development teams as a consultant?" Princess Lyra paused, considering the question with the same careful attention she brought to everything else. "I would find such collaboration intellectually stimulating. However, traditional diplomatic arrangements typically involve extensive social protocols that I find challenging to navigate." "What if we structured the collaboration differently?" Marcus suggested. "Focus on the technical aspects, with minimal social requirements. Direct communication with our scientists and engineers, bypass the usual diplomatic entertainment obligations." Something resembling relief crossed Princess Lyra's expression. "That approach would be acceptable. I prefer working environments that prioritize efficiency over social convention." Reynolds ended the communication with promises to draw up preliminary collaboration agreements, leaving Marcus alone with Princess Lyra in his office. She stood near the window that offered a view of the embassy gardens, watching the maintenance robots tend to plants from dozens of different worlds. "I should thank you," she said without turning from the window. "For what?" "For last night. For treating my observations about mathematical optimization as interesting rather than strange. For offering to dance without expecting me to engage in complex social performance." She turned to face him. "Most beings interact with me out of obligation to my mother's position, or they avoid me entirely because they find my communication style uncomfortable." Marcus joined her at the window, maintaining the respectful distance he'd learned she preferred. "Their loss. Your insights about systematic efficiency could solve problems that our best engineers have been struggling with for years." "You mean that?" Princess Lyra said. And it wasn't quite a question. "You actually find my analytical approach valuable, not simply tolerable." "I find it remarkable," Marcus said honestly. "Last night, when you explained how the city's light patterns revealed its planning algorithms, I saw something I'd never noticed before. You have a gift for seeing the elegant mathematics underlying seemingly random systems." Princess Lyra was quiet for a moment, processing this. My parents love me, and they understand my strengths in military strategy and scientific analysis. But they also worry about my isolation from traditional social structures. They fear that my inability to navigate complex social dynamics will limit my effectiveness as a future leader. Maybe the question isn't how to make you better at traditional social dynamics, Marcus said thoughtfully. Maybe it's how to create new leadership approaches that utilize your particular strengths. Before Princess Lyra could respond, another soft chime indicated an incoming message on Marcus's terminal. The display showed Chancellor Vorthan's personal seal, marked as urgent diplomatic correspondence. I should handle this, Marcus said, moving to his desk, but I hope we can continue this conversation. Princess Lyra nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. Ambassador Chen, would you be interested in visiting our military strategic planning facility? I believe you would find the mathematical modeling systems aesthetically pleasing. Marcus smiled at the careful way she extended the invitation. I would be honored, Princess. After she left, Marcus opened Chancellor Vorthan's message. The text was brief, but loaded with implications. Ambassador Chen, the Empress requests your presence at tomorrow's Council of War. Your unique perspective on strategic optimization has been deemed valuable for upcoming territorial negotiations. This is an unprecedented invitation for a human representative. Marcus leaned back in his chair, beginning to understand the ripple effects of a simple dance on a quiet balcony. In the complex web of galactic politics, small gestures of genuine respect could apparently reshape entire diplomatic relationships. His communication terminal chimed again, this time with a message from his own staff. The subject line read, Media Attention Alert. Princess Lyra Coverage. Marcus opened the file to find a collection of news reports from across the galaxy, all focused on his interaction with the Drakmari royal family. The coverage ranged from straightforward diplomatic reporting to more sensationalized accounts. But one theme emerged consistently. For the first time in years, Princess Lyra had been seen engaging enthusiastically with an outsider. Several reports mentioned her animated discussion of mathematical theories, her obvious comfort during their conversation, and her unprecedented visit to the human embassy. One report, from a Drakmari cultural correspondent, provided context that made Marcus's throat tighten with understanding. Princess Lyra's neurological differences have made her one of the most isolated figures in galactic politics, despite her acknowledged brilliance. Last night's interaction with the human ambassador represents the first documented case of sustained, comfortable social engagement outside her immediate family in over 3 years. Marcus closed the report and sat in the quiet of his office, processing the weight of responsibility he hadn't realized he was accepting. His simple offer to dance had apparently opened a door that had been closed for years, not just for Princess Lyra, but for potential new forms of diplomatic and strategic cooperation between species. His thoughts were interrupted by his assistant's voice over the intercom. Ambassador, you have 7 requests for interviews about last night's reception, 3 invitations to cultural events, specifically requesting Princess Lyra's attendance, and a message from Empress Zalara herself requesting a private meeting. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar weight of diplomatic complexity settling around him. But underneath the political implications, he found himself genuinely looking forward to visiting the strategic planning facility Princess Lyra had mentioned. Her promise that he would find the mathematical modeling aesthetically pleasing suggested she understood something about him that most people missed, the same way he seemed to understand something about her approach to the world. That afternoon, Princess Lyra arrived at the embassy with a small escort and what she described as preliminary optimization models for the Colonial Development Project. Marcus met her in the embassy's conference room, where she had spread out holographic displays showing resource flow diagrams, that looked more like abstract art than military planning documents. These patterns represent sustainable population growth curves for colonies with limited initial terraforming capability, she explained, manipulating the holographic displays with precise gestures. The mathematical relationships between energy input, agricultural development, and population stability follow predictable functions that can be optimized using these algorithms. Marcus found himself drawn into the elegant logic of her systems, asking questions that led to increasingly complex discussions of interplanetary resource management. Princess Lyra responded to his inquiries with obvious pleasure, her explanations becoming more animated as she realized he was genuinely following her reasoning. "Your questions suggest you think in systematic terms," she observed after they'd spent an hour working through terraforming optimization scenarios. Most beings approach colonial planning as a series of separate problems to be solved independently. You see the interconnected relationships between different system components. "It comes from growing up in a family of engineers," Marcus said. "My father designs water treatment systems, and he used to explain how changing one variable in the process could create cascading effects throughout the entire system. I learned to think about problems in terms of connected networks rather than isolated issues." Princess Lyra nodded approvingly. "That systematic thinking is why you immediately understood the efficiency principles underlying the city planning we observed last night. And why you recognize that my communication style reflects a different information processing approach rather than a social deficiency." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside the conference room. Through the transparent walls, they could see a group of delegates from various species gathering in the embassy's main corridor, their body language suggesting intense discussion. Marcus's assistant appeared at the door. "Ambassador, we have a situation developing. Several military commanders from the Coalition fleet are requesting immediate audience with Princess Lyra. Apparently there's been a development in the border dispute with the hegemony forces that requires strategic analysis." Princess Lyra straightened, her demeanor shifting instantly from intellectual curiosity to focused professionalism. "What is the nature of the tactical situation?" "Long-range sensors have detected hegemony battle groups moving toward the Kepler Junction," the assistant reported. "Coalition Command needs strategic assessment of their likely objectives and optimal defensive positioning." Marcus watched as Princess Lyra processed this information, her golden eyes unfocusing slightly as she worked through the tactical implications. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute certainty. "The hegemony is testing coalition response time and coordination capabilities. The Kepler Junction provides access to 3 different strategic corridors, but the actual target is likely the mining operations in the Vega system. This is a feint designed to draw coalition forces away from their primary objective." The military commanders who had gathered outside the conference room were now listening intently through the open door. One of them, a tall Zelenari officer whose crystalline features reflected the room's lighting, stepped forward. "Princess, your assessment differs from our initial tactical analysis. Our models suggest the hegemony intends to establish a forward base at Kepler Junction itself." Princess Lyra moved to the room's holographic display system, calling up star charts and tactical data with practiced efficiency. "Observe the mathematical patterns in their fleet positioning," she said, manipulating the display to show troop movements over the past several days. "The hegemony force composition includes heavy mining equipment disguised as military engineering units. Their formation suggests preparation for resource extraction rather than base establishment." Marcus found himself caught between fascination and concern as he watched Princess Lyra transform into what was clearly her natural element. The careful, precise social interaction he'd grown accustomed to gave way to confident strategic analysis that had multiple military officers taking notes and asking for clarification on tactical details. "The optimal coalition response," Princess Lyra continued, involves establishing a defensive perimeter that appears to protect the junction while actually funneling hegemony forces into a tactical disadvantage at their true objective. I can provide detailed positioning algorithms within the hour. The Zelenari commander exchanged glances with his colleagues, then addressed Marcus directly. Ambassador Chen, with your permission, we would like to request Princess Lyra's immediate consultation on defensive planning. This situation requires her particular analytical capabilities. Marcus looked at Princess Lyra, who met his gaze with an expression that managed to convey both professional duty and personal choice. Princess, the decision is entirely yours, but I hope you know that regardless of what tactical expertise you provide to the Coalition, my respect for your insights isn't conditional on your military contributions. Something in Princess Lyra's expression softened at his words. Thank you for that clarification, Ambassador. I choose to provide strategic consultation because the mathematical elegance of effective defensive planning is intellectually satisfying, not because I feel obligated to prove my value. As the military commanders began coordinating the emergency strategy session, Marcus realized that the simple dance they'd shared on a quiet balcony had opened more doors than either of them had imagined. Princess Lyra was no longer the isolated royal daughter avoiding social obligations. She was becoming a recognized strategic asset whose unique analytical gifts were finally finding appropriate venues for expression. The transformation had implications that stretched far beyond personal friendship, reaching into the complex relationships between species, the mathematical optimization of interstellar cooperation, and the recognition that different ways of processing information could yield insights that traditional diplomatic approaches had missed entirely. 6 months after the Convergence celebration, the Coalition's victory at the Vega system had become the stuff of military legend. Princess Lyra's strategic predictions had proven accurate to the decimal point, and her defensive algorithms had allowed a smaller coalition force to outmaneuver a numerically superior hegemony fleet with minimal casualties. The battle had ended not with devastating losses, but with the mathematical precision of a well-executed equation. Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the New Earth Drakmari research station, watching construction drones position the final modules of what would become the galaxy's first interspecies optimization laboratory. The project had grown from Princess Lyra's colonial development insights into something far more ambitious, a comprehensive approach to applying systematic thinking to problems that had puzzled the galactic community for generations. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see Princess Lyra in the laboratory's central workspace, surrounded by holographic displays showing resource flow models for everything from interstellar trade routes to ecosystem restoration projects. She moved among the displays with the fluid confidence of someone working in their natural element, occasionally making precise adjustments to mathematical parameters while 3 different species of scientists took notes and asked questions. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. The carefully guarded princess who had once stood isolated at diplomatic receptions was now the acknowledged leader of the galaxy's most innovative strategic thinking group. Her unique neurological processing, once seen as a limitation in social situations, had become recognized as a different form of intelligence perfectly suited to seeing patterns that others missed. "She's in her element," came a familiar voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Empress Zalara approaching, her crimson scales catching the light from the nearby star. Unlike their first meeting at the embassy reception, the Empress moved with relaxed confidence, her formal bearing softened by genuine warmth. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, offering the respectful bow that had become second nature. "Please." "Ambassador," Empress Zalara said with a gesture that invited him to stand normally. "After everything that has developed between our peoples, I think we can dispense with excessive formality. I came to thank you, though I suspect you're tired of hearing that from members of my family." Marcus smiled, remembering similar conversations with Chancellor Vorthan and Prince Thane over the past months. I'm not sure what I've done that deserves such gratitude. Princess Lyra's achievements are entirely her own. Empress Zalara moved to stand beside him at the observation window, watching her daughter explain something complex to a group of fascinated researchers. What you did, Ambassador Chen, was see her as a person worth knowing, rather than a problem to be managed. Do you understand how rare that is in the political circles where we operate? Through the window, they could see Princess Lyra manipulating a holographic model that appeared to show migration patterns across multiple star systems. Her explanations were animated, her golden eyes bright with intellectual excitement as she guided her colleagues through the mathematical relationships she'd discovered in seemingly random data. In the years since her neurological differences became apparent, Empress Zalara continued, I've watched countless diplomats, military officers, and court officials interact with Lyra with careful politeness that barely concealed their discomfort with her direct communication style. They acknowledged her intelligence while avoiding actual engagement with her ideas. Marcus nodded, understanding the isolation such treatment would create. She has extraordinary insights. Their discomfort was their loss. Exactly, the Empress said, but you approached her with genuine curiosity about her perspective without trying to change how she processed information or expressed ideas. That simple recognition of her value as a person, not just as a royal heir with useful strategic abilities, created space for her to flourish. The conversation was interrupted by Princess Lyra emerging from the laboratory, accompanied by Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading xenobiologist, and researcher Vex, a crystalline being whose mathematical abilities had earned respect throughout the scientific community. Princess Lyra's expression carried the satisfied focus that Marcus had learned to associate with successful problem-solving sessions. Ambassador Chen, Princess Lyra said as the group approached, we've completed the optimization models for the Centauri Ecosystem Restoration Project. The mathematical relationships between species reintroduction and environmental stability follow more elegant patterns than our initial projections suggested. Dr. Kim stepped forward, barely containing her excitement. Princess Lyra's analysis revealed feedback loops in the ecosystem data that our traditional modeling completely missed. We've been approaching restoration as a linear process, but her systematic thinking showed us it's actually a complex network of interconnected relationships. Researcher Vex's response came as a harmonic pattern that the translation system rendered as enthusiastic agreement. The mathematical beauty of these models exceeds aesthetic parameters I previously considered possible. Princess Lyra's unique analytical perspective has transformed our understanding of systematic optimization. Marcus felt a familiar warmth as he watched Princess Lyra acknowledge the praise with careful consideration rather than dismissal. Over the months, she had grown more comfortable accepting recognition for her contributions, understanding that her colleagues' enthusiasm reflected genuine appreciation for her insights rather than polite obligation. Would you like to see the models? Princess Lyra asked, addressing Marcus directly. I believe you would find the pattern relationships intellectually satisfying. I would love to, Marcus replied, following the group back into the laboratory. The next hour passed in a blur of complex mathematical relationships that governed everything from planetary weather patterns to interspecies trade efficiency. Princess Lyra guided Marcus through each model with the same patient attention to detail she'd shown during their first conversation about city planning, ensuring he understood the underlying principles before moving to more complex applications. The fundamental insight, Princess Lyra explained as they worked through a particularly elegant ecosystem model, is that most beings approach systematic problems by trying to control individual variables. But these systems are self-regulating networks. The optimization comes from understanding the mathematical relationships between components, then creating conditions that allow the system to balance itself. Marcus studied the holographic display showing how species reintroduction affected soil chemistry, which influenced plant growth, which altered atmospheric composition in ways that created favorable conditions for additional species introduction. The model revealed a cascade of positive feedback loops that, once initiated, would drive ecosystem recovery with minimal external intervention. It's like solving a puzzle where the pieces change shape based on how the other pieces are arranged, Marcus said, beginning to grasp the complexity Princess Lyra worked with naturally. Exactly, Princess Lyra replied, her eyes brightening with the pleasure of being understood. Traditional optimization assumes static relationships between variables. Real systems involve dynamic relationships where changing one element alters the mathematical properties of all connected elements. Dr. Kim joined their conversation, pulling up additional displays. This approach has applications far beyond ecosystem restoration. We're applying Princess Lyra's systematic thinking to problems ranging from interstellar shipping logistics to social integration protocols for new species joining the galactic community. Social integration protocols? Marcus asked, intrigued by the unexpected application. Princess Lyra nodded, calling up a new set of models. Most integration programs assume all species adapt to social structures in similar ways, but the mathematical analysis reveals that different neurological processing styles require different approaches to effective integration. Forcing uniform social protocols creates unnecessary stress and reduces overall system efficiency. As Marcus studied the integration models, he began to understand something that went beyond mathematical optimization. Princess Lyra was developing frameworks that would allow different types of minds to contribute effectively without requiring them to conform to arbitrary social standards. This could revolutionize how we approach diplomacy, Marcus said, working through the implications. Instead of expecting everyone to adapt to traditional social protocols, we could create flexible interaction systems that accommodate different processing styles. The applications extend beyond diplomacy, Princess Lyra said, her expression carrying the focused intensity that marked her deepest insights. Military strategy, scientific research, resource management, even artistic collaboration could benefit from optimization approaches that account for neurological diversity. Empress Zelara, who had been listening quietly to the technical discussion, stepped forward with an expression of maternal pride mixed with political calculation. Lyra, your systematic approaches could transform how the galactic community handles integration challenges for all species, not just those with neurological differences. Princess Lyra considered this, then nodded slowly. The mathematical principles are universally applicable. Different species process information in different ways, but the optimization algorithms for effective cooperation follow consistent patterns. Dr. Kim pulled up a final display showing preliminary results from pilot programs implementing Princess Lyra's integration protocols. Early results exceed all projections. Teams using the systematic optimization approaches show increased creativity, improved problem-solving efficiency, and significantly reduced interpersonal conflict. Marcus found himself thinking about his own journey from uncertain newcomer to confident ambassador, recognizing how many of his successes had come from learning to work with different perspectives rather than trying to force uniform approaches. Princess, these frameworks could help every species contribute their unique strengths without sacrificing their natural processing styles. That is the mathematical elegance of effective optimization, Princess Lyra replied. Maximum efficiency occurs when system components operate according to their inherent properties rather than fighting against them. The discussion was interrupted by an announcement from the station's communication system. Attention all personnel. Incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Council. All department heads report to the main conference center. As they made their way to the conference center, Marcus noticed the easy interaction between Princess Lyra and her colleagues. Gone was the careful distance that had characterized her social interactions at the Convergence celebration. She moved among the research team with comfortable confidence, responding to questions with direct clarity and offering insights with obvious enthusiasm for sharing knowledge. The main conference center had filled with representatives from dozens of species, all focusing attention on the large holographic display showing Chairman Kex of the Galactic Council. The elderly Mantari's antenna movements indicated formal communication of significant importance. "Colleagues," Chairman Kex began, his translation coming through clearly, "I address you today to announce the unanimous Council decision to establish the Systematic Optimization Institute as an official galactic organization, with Princess Lyra as Director of Strategic Analysis and Ambassador Chen as Director of Interspecies Cooperation." The announcement created a buzz of excited conversation among the assembled scientists and diplomats. Marcus felt a mixture of pride and daunting responsibility as he realized the scope of what they were being asked to undertake. Chairman Kex continued, "The mathematical approaches developed through the Earth-Drakmari collaboration have proven applicable to challenges that have puzzled the galactic community for generations. The Council requests immediate development of optimization protocols for resource allocation, territorial dispute resolution, and integration support for emerging spacefaring civilizations." Princess Lyra stepped forward, her formal bearing automatically engaging for official communication. "Chairman Kex, we accept the appointment and the responsibility it entails. However, I recommend that the Institute's charter emphasize collaborative development rather than centralized control. The most effective systematic optimization occurs when diverse perspectives contribute to solution development." "An excellent suggestion, Princess," Chairman Kex replied. "The Council authorizes you to develop organizational structures that embody the optimization principles you've pioneered." As the formal communication ended, Marcus found himself surrounded by colleagues offering congratulations and asking questions about the Institute's future direction. But his attention was drawn to Princess Lyra, who stood near the edge of the crowd with an expression of thoughtful satisfaction. He made his way through the congratulatory conversations to join her. "How do you feel about officially directing strategic analysis for the entire galactic community?" Princess Lyra considered the question with her characteristic careful attention. "The mathematical challenges will be intellectually stimulating, and the potential for systematic improvement across multiple civilizations is significant. But the most satisfying aspect is the recognition that different approaches to processing information can contribute valuable insights to collaborative problem-solving." Marcus smiled, understanding what she meant. "No more standing on balconies avoiding diplomatic receptions because your thinking style doesn't match traditional social expectations. Instead, creating new frameworks where different thinking styles are valued for their unique contributions," Princess Lyra agreed. "The mathematical elegance of that optimization pleases me greatly." As evening settled over the research station, Marcus stood once again on the observation deck, watching the stars that now represented not unknown territories, but collaborative opportunities. The galaxy had revealed itself to be a complex system where different forms of intelligence could work together to solve problems that no single perspective could address alone. Princess Lyra joined him at the window, and they stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the station that had become a symbol of successful systematic optimization. The mathematical beauty of cooperation had proven more elegant than either of them had initially imagined. "Ambassador Chen," Princess Lyra said finally, "I should thank you again for that first dance on the embassy balcony." "Princess," Marcus replied, "I think what we discovered was worth much more than gratitude. We found a way for different minds to work together without losing what makes them unique." Princess Lyra nodded, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the observation windows. The mathematics of understanding, it turns out, create the most beautiful patterns of all. And in the quiet of the observation deck, with the galaxy spread out before them like a vast equation waiting to be solved, Marcus realized that sometimes the most profound discoveries came not from grand gestures or complex negotiations, but from the simple recognition that every mind contained its own form of brilliance, waiting for the right conditions to shine.